It begins with silence. Not the comforting quiet of dawn or the hush of deep thought, but the void that follows when someone simply vanishes. A respected police officer, Assistant Police Inspector Ashwini Beadre, walks out of her Kalamboli flat on a calm April morning, never to be seen again. Her neighbors, colleagues, even her own family believe she's off on a meditative retreat. Yet beneath that placid surface, something festers, a lie dressed in routine. How does someone in uniform, sworn to uphold the law, slip through the cracks of society unnoticed for weeks? The answer is darker than anyone imagined. Ashwini was not just another officer. Her career, built through years of discipline, bore the unmistakable mark of a driven woman. From Kolhapur's Aulad village to Maharashtra's elite police units, she had climbed through grit and resolve. Her marriage to Raju Gaur, a political figure, seemed stable. She even had a daughter, a family, a post, a purpose. But purpose is fragile. Behind the rigid smile of discipline often hides turbulence. In April 2016, Ashwini's world cracked quietly. To her security guard, she said she'd visit her sick mother. To her office, a text claimed she was entering a Vipassana meditation retreat. But neither of those places ever welcomed her. Days passed, then weeks. Her phone, once a conduit of life and duty, fell silent. The family waited in nervous hope, lulled by her authority. She's a police officer. She knows what she's doing, they told themselves. But by May, hope curdled into dread. The Kalamboli landlord mentioned unpaid rent. Doors remained locked. The mother's illness prevented a direct search, and so the silence spread, unnatural, gnawing. Finally, her father registered a missing persons complaint. The disappearance of a cop, once an abstraction, became an open wound for the family. As the police investigation awakened from slumber, CP Sangeeta Alfonso took the reins. Known for her uncompromising methods and earned nickname Lady Singham, she quickly uncovered troubling signs. Ashwini had left behind not just her possessions, but also her story. Nothing was packed. No travel arrangements confirmed. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Alfonso began to trace her digital ghost, CDR records, surveillance footage, message logs. And like any ghost worth fearing, Ashwini's trail led to a name repeated over 300 times in her last days, Abhay Kurundkar. Abhay wasn't just a colleague. He was her former superior, her confidant, and, as would soon be discovered, her tormentor. During their posting in Sangli, the two had grown close, too close. Surveillance revealed that on April 11th, Ashwini was seen boarding a red Volkswagen near Thane Station. The same model driven by Abhay. CCTV tracked her toward Mira Road. Her phone's final signal pulsed from that neighborhood. And there, in a nondescript apartment in Mukund Plaza, Abhay lived in flat 401. Ashwini had entered that flat. She never left. Behind closed doors, their relationship spiraled. Secret videos recovered from a teddy bear with a hidden camera showed not affection, but violence. Slaps, shouts, tears. Ashwini caught everything. This wasn't love. It was a siege. Yet she stayed silent. Why? Perhaps she hoped for justice. Perhaps she feared what exposure would cost. But she documented everything. Photos, recordings, letters. One of them chillingly read, "If anything happens to me, hold Abhay responsible." That letter, too, was buried in her laptop. The scope widened. Abhay's call records revealed frequent communication with a political associate, Rajesh Patil, the nephew of a powerful BJP figure. On the night of Ashwini's disappearance, Rajesh's phone pinged near Mira Road. 8 calls were exchanged with Abhay between 10 p.m. and midnight. Another name emerged, Mahesh Falankar, a banker and Abhay's childhood friend. The noose of suspicion grew tighter. But without a body, it was all circumstantial. The burden of proof, a luxury Abhay understood all too well. Investigators searched the sea. They scoured Abhay's flat. Forensic teams detected faint black stains on the walls. A towel with blood was found, Abhay's, not Ashwini's. Her body, her blood, her DNA, nothing was found. Without a corpse, the case risked collapse. Yet ACP Alfonso persisted. She wasn't chasing evidence anymore. She was chasing truth, a truth the system was too cowardly to acknowledge. That a predator had thrived inside its own ranks. The pressure intensified. Political threats, departmental roadblocks, even Alfonso's removal from the case couldn't quell the uproar. The media latched on. The case gripped the public. A decorated officer had vanished. A powerful man stood accused. And still, the system remained paralyzed. But just as silence had once masked Ashwini's disappearance, now a voice shattered it. Mahesh Falankar cracked. His confession, delivered in shuddering syllables, opened the gates to hell. There is something deeply unholy about a confession. It does not bring peace. It does not resurrect the dead. It merely unveils a horror too monstrous to deny. Mahesh Falankar, the once silent friend, finally spoke, and what he said turned suspicion into nightmare. According to him, on the night of April 11, 2016, Ashwini Beadre was murdered. Not metaphorically, not circumstantially, but physically, brutally, clinically, within the suffocating confines of Flat 401 in Mukund Plaza. Her murderer, the man she once trusted, perhaps loved, Inspector Abhay Kurundkar. Mahesh's voice trembled as he described the evening. Ashwini had arrived at the flat after duty, drawn there under the promise of a final conversation, a resolution. She believed Abhay would finally fulfill his word, marriage, commitment, dignity. But instead, she was met with rage. Heated arguments turned violent. Blows were exchanged. She pleaded. He struck. A crescendo of betrayal played out within the sterile walls of the apartment. And then, silence. Not the kind Ashwini hoped for in her fictitious Vipassana camp, but the final, inescapable quiet of death. But Abhay's cruelty did not end with murder. Mahesh confessed that Abhay had already orchestrated every step of this grotesque ballet. 6 days before the crime, he had ordered a wood-cutting machine. Yes, a device meant not for furniture, but for flesh. He'd also purchased heavy iron weights. That night, after killing her, he dismembered Ashwini's body, sawed through bones, divided her into 4 pieces, stored her remains in his refrigerator like meat, waiting for the right tide to erase her existence. Mahesh claimed that Abhay called both him and Rajesh Patil shortly after the act. In his voice was no regret, only cold, calculated commands. "Come, we must finish this." Rajesh, ever the political opportunist, stayed downstairs in the parking lot, avoiding direct involvement. Mahesh, however, went up. He helped Abhay carry the weighted body parts, now packed like grim luggage, and together they drove toward the dark shores near Vasai Creek. In the dead of night, they offered her to the sea. No funeral, no prayer, just weighted silence sinking into oblivion. The confession ignited a fresh storm. ACP Alfonso launched a renewed, brutal investigation. With divers, sonar, even Navy assistance, the team searched the sea. Nothing. No body, no remnants, not even a bone surfaced. Ashwini had been erased with monstrous precision. Forensic teams revisited the flat, peeling back its fresh paint, searching for blood traces. towel was found, soaked in blood. Yet it was Abhay's. The wall stains? Not blood. The woodcutter? Vanished. Everything was cleaned, hidden, or destroyed. Abhay's training had served him well, not in service of law, but of murder. Despite this, the circumstantial evidence was suffocating. Surveillance footage placed Ashwini entering the vehicle. Her last phone signal, April 11th, 8 p.m., came from Mira Road. Her phone turned on again briefly after her death on April 13th to send fake messages. "I am going to Vipassana camp," the texts read. But Ashwini never used Y to spell you, only Abhay did. Even in death, her voice had been hijacked by the man who silenced her. And yet, the law faltered. The state failed. ACP Alfonso was removed. Pressure from political corridors strangled justice. When Ashwini's family approached the police commissioner, they were not comforted. They were warned. "Your lives are in danger now." Imagine that. Grieving parents told to protect themselves because they dared to seek justice for their daughter. The very institution she served had become a fortress, shielding her killer. By October 2016, her family had no option but to knock on the doors of the Bombay High Court. The court, aghast at the incompetence and lethargy of the police, demanded action. And still nothing. Abhay, ever manipulative, moved through the judicial system like a shadow. He denied everything. He claimed conspiracy, character assassination, professional jealousy. The case stalled. Files gathered dust, and yet the evidence mounted. Her letters, her videos, the witness statements, each one a whisper from the grave, demanding to be heard. On December 7th, 2017, the dam finally cracked. Abhay Kurundkar was arrested. The man who wore the police badge now sat handcuffed by the same department he once manipulated. With him, Rajesh Patil too was taken. Then the driver, Kundan Bhandari, and finally Mahesh Valankar, whose confession had detonated the truth. 4 men, 1 bodiless crime, and a tide of unanswered questions. But none of them confessed to murder, only to pieces of the aftermath. This is where the machinery of law begins to falter under the weight of bloodless truth. There was no weapon recovered, no blood of the victim, no corpse. The sea, that loyal accomplice, had swallowed her too well. All that remained were signs, circumstantial, digital, emotional. The court case dragged on. 85 witnesses were heard. Still, no conviction. As of 2024, the trial crawled forward. Futile, pathetic, a grotesque theater of lost time. Why did Abhay kill her? The question echoed through the halls of justice. Love? Love does not dismember. Power, partially. Control, entirely. Ashwini had started recording everything, his violence, his threats, his broken promises. She had started pushing for justice, even demanding transfer of property. And Abhay, a man of reputation and ambition, feared exposure. He would rather butcher than be shamed. This is not merely a story of a woman murdered by a man. This is the tale of an institution betrayed by its own, of justice smothered by power. Ashwini was not just killed by Abhay. She was murdered by a system that allowed him to rise, to rule, to erase. And yet, what if she never truly died? What if pieces of her story still linger on old devices, in unseen messages, in hearts that refuse to forget? A bodiless murder is a paradox that haunts the very foundation of law. No corpse, no blood, no murder weapon. And yet, an overwhelming chorus of shadows pointing to one undeniable truth. Ashwini Beadre was killed, dissected, and discarded like refuse. Her name, once adorned with authority and duty, now lingers in legal documents as a missing person. The courtroom, that supposed sanctum of truth, has become a labyrinth of whispers, legal maneuvering, and delay. The trial, ongoing since 2018, has become a theater of the absurd. 85 witnesses, 4 accused, mountains of circumstantial evidence, yet no verdict, no closure, no justice. The courtroom has seen all. Ashwini's frantic voice messages saved on an old device, her handwritten letters pleading for protection, the recordings of abuse preserved with a survivor's foresight, the laptop with those private photographs, the teddy bear with its cold, unblinking lens. Still, the judiciary flinches. The defense insists this is all fabricated, a smear campaign to destroy a respected officer's life. But if so, where is Ashwini? Where did she go? Did she vanish into thin air just to stain Abhay's name? The court, burdened by its own cowardice, doesn't ask that question loudly enough. Abhay sits there each session, expressionless, immovable. The arrogance of a man who knows the law was never made to ensnare people like him. His lawyer speaks of lack of direct evidence, of fabricated testimonies, and emotional manipulation by the victim's family. They twist Mahesh's confession into hearsay. They discredit Rajesh's proximity as coincidence. They argue that no remains mean no crime, as if Ashwini was never flesh and blood, but merely a phantom conjured by grief and fury. Meanwhile, her family continues the procession of pain. Her father, once a soldier, now an old man hollowed by bureaucracy. Her mother, slipping further into dementia, asks for her daughter in moments of clarity. Her brother, who left his life in Chennai, still attends court dates like rituals of remembrance. Each day, they relive the crime, not through memory, but through delay. Every adjournment is a blade. Every postponed hearing, a death sentence with no corpse. And what of the system Ashwini served? The same police force that paraded her merit now avoids her name like poison. Internal memos circulate in whispers. Officers avoid association, files vanish. The hero turned liability. ACP Sangeeta Alfonso, the woman who dared to touch the truth, was demoted, isolated, pushed into a bureaucratic oblivion. She speaks little now, not because she lacks conviction, but because the system taught her the price of integrity. Still, not all truths can be buried. The forensic gaps, once seen as weaknesses, have become damning through sheer accumulation. The sea yielded no remains, but the motive drips from every documented interaction. Ashwini had demanded marriage. She had requested transfer of Abhay's assets. She had captured his threats. In one recorded conversation, he says coldly, "If you try to destroy me, I will make you disappear." And so he did. A trained investigator, a manipulator of evidence, a man whose ambition would not allow a single crack in his public image. But ambition leaves a trail. The purchase of a wood-cutting machine 6 days before the disappearance. The acquisition of heavy weights for exercise, he said. The fake messages from Ashwini's phone. The conflicting accounts from Rajesh and Mahesh. The phone location data. The CCTV. All of it, brick by damning brick, builds a mausoleum of guilt. Yet the court hesitates to call it murder. Because if they do, they must also indict themselves, their delays, their cowardice, their collusion. And so the family waits. Not for hope. Hope died with Ashwini. They wait for acknowledgement. For truth to be spoken aloud, not just whispered in corridors. They want the system to say, yes, she mattered. Yes, she was betrayed. Yes, she was murdered by the very man who swore to protect the innocent. In the final court session of November 2024, the case was declared closed for hearing. The judge said the verdict would come soon, a word that has lost all meaning to the Beadre family. Now, they simply sit in silence, watching the clock like executioners waiting for a swing that may never come. And yet, this story cannot end in silence, because what happened to Ashwini was not isolated. It was systemic, a tale repeated in different forms across the country, power swallowing justice, gender used as leverage, the uniform, a mask for predators. So, the story ends not with a judgment, but a question. If a police officer with evidence, training, and a family cannot get justice, what chance do the rest of you truly have? Now, you, dear viewer, must answer. Was this the story of one woman's tragic end, or a mirror held up to a society that protects its monsters? Let us hear your truth in the comments, because sometimes silence is the greatest accomplice of all.